Welcome to Lesson 3.3a, the second part of the subjunctive use. This is a continuation from the first subjunctive use lesson where we talked about impersonal expressions, quizás, ojalá, and tal vez. This particular lesson will focus on common clause 1 actions that typically indicate command, opinion, or emotion. So to kind of recap, we have two moods in Spanish. We have an indicative mood and a subjunctive mood. The indicative mood for the present tense is the first set of conjugations that we ever learned in Spanish. So the first way we ever learned how to conjugate was o, as, a, amos, ais, an. We can pretty much use this indicative tense, the o, as, a, amos, ais, an, in a variety of situations. We can use them in simple sentences and we can use them in complex sentences. However, in a complex sentence, we'll always use the indicative in the first clause, but we can only use the indicative in the second clause when code is not present. And what I mean by code is command, opinion, doubt, and emotion. So the two examples that I have here, yo vivo en una casa, simple sentence, present tense. Yo vivo en una casa que está en los suburbios. Vivo is in the clause 1, so it has to be indicative. Está is in clause 2. So I have to look at the fact that I state I live in a house. I live in a house does not denote command, opinion, doubt, or emotion, so I can use the indicative with está. The subjunctive is the new mood that we've been learning about. It's where we have to go into the yo form, drop the o, and flip our endings. This new set of conjugations can only be used in the second clause. They have to follow the first clause, and that first clause has to have a code expression. So the front half of the sentence has to indicate something that is a command, an opinion, doubt, or emotion. And when those four elements are in the front half of the sentence, it requires us to use the subjunctive conjugation for the second half of the sentence, or the second clause verb. So yo insisto que tú estudies para el examen. Insisto is insist, it's a command, so estudies is in the flipped subjunctive form. Es importante que ellos presten atención. Es importante is in normal indicative because it's at the front half of the sentence, but because I'm denoting that something is important, that's an opinion-based statement, so presten has to go into the subjunctive form. Alright, so how we can kind of look at this decision-making process is via this diagram. My sentence is always going to be connected by the conjunction que. So in front of que I have clause 1. Within clause 1 I have a subject and a verb. That verb has to be in the indicative. That verb cannot be in any other conjugation. But I have to look at that entire clause to figure out if within that subject and verb, within C1, clause 1, do I have an element of code? Do I have a command, opinion, doubt, or emotion expressed in that front half? Because the answer to that question is going to tell me how to manipulate verb number 2. If I have code, verb number 2 is going to go present subjunctive. If I do not have code, verb number 2 is going to go into the normal present indicative tense. So that's kind of the flow chart, or the way to really look at these sentences. So this unit really focuses in more on vocabulary building. We have to start recognizing what words, what verbs, what expressions indicate command, opinion, doubt, and emotion. Now we've already learned a bunch of impersonal expressions, and that's going to go on to an ever-growing list called a command sheet, or called a code sheet. Command, opinion, doubt, emotion. Here are some command words, some verbs in Spanish that commonly indicate a command or recommendation or requirement. And when these verbs are present in the first clause, they require the verb in clause 2 to be conjugated into the subjunctive. So verbs like preferir, insistir en, mandar, querer, exigir, and requerir all indicate command of some shape or form. The other way you can have a command indicated in the first clause is to actually have the command form. This means that the verb that's in that front part of the sentence is conjugated into the informal to command or the formal usted, ustedes command. If that's the case, then the second verb would also have to go into the subjunctive. Now here's our list of common verbs that express emotion. When emotion is present in the first clause or in the front half of the sentence, it means that the second verb, or verb number 2, must go into the subjunctive. And now, this is the most common emotional words that denote emotion. Any emotion under the sun would fall into this category. So even though I really only say happy and sad and scared, nervous or angry would also fit in there. Frustrated, stressed out. So any emotion would technically fall into this category, but here's a list of the most common. Desear, esperar, temer, tener miedo de, alegrarse de, estar contento, estar triste, sorprender, gustar, and sentirse. These are our most common. And if you've noticed, I have an asterisk next to those that are also stem changers just to help remind us. Finally, we have a couple more impersonal expressions to add to our database. Lesson number 1, subjunctive use number 1, had a variety of impersonal expressions because that was the main focus. Here are 2 more that we're going to add to that list. Es una lástima, es una pena. Now remember, an impersonal expression has no specified subject. The subject of the sentence is it. And most impersonal expressions are opinionated, and so therefore they will require verb number 2 to go into the subjunctive. So we need to add these 2 additional impersonal expressions to our opinion list. Well, let's see how much you learned. See you in class.